Hi everyone, and welcome to our next edition of YA Meet the Creator. And today I'm going to be talking to Melissa Welliver about her fabulous dark dystopian novel, The Undying Tower. So it's lovely to be talking to you, Melissa. Welcome
Lovely to
along.
say hello as well. Thank you.
Absolutely fabulous. Would you mind starting us off with a reading? Because I know everybody's going to be as gripped as I was.
Thank you so much. Yes, so my name's Melissa Welliver. I wrote The Undying Tower. I'll kick us off with a reading, and I was agonizing a bit where to start, but I think just chapter one, first couple of pages, will set us up quite nicely. So, no spoilers as well. So, chapter 1 hour before. An old man with a young face was about to be hanged outside the cinema. His photograph was splashed across every poster that lined the walls of the crumbling building. I pushed forward through the crowd, my hands gripped so tightly around the handles of Dad's wheelchair that my knuckles were white. My heels stuck to the gummy concrete. I hated the standing room section of the corrections. There were so many people, too many, all crowded round burger vans and concession stalls, all trying to grab a memento of the day. There were the usual posters with the same quote printed across them. I was at the 345th correction in Raw Estuary. And there were dozens of multicoloured t-shirts in different designs. The one at the front of the stall had the Avalonia Zone, or the AZ as we mostly called it, flag printed across it, the silhouette of an owl with a lifeless snake in its talons. Another shirt had a mugshot of a seemingly young man, the same man on the posters scattered around the staging. I was so busy studying the undying man's eyes that I stumbled. The stench of sweat was hard to avoid as my face collided with the back of a large woman in one of the commemorative t-shirts. She turned and nearly knocked her hot dog over me, the ketchup spilling out over her bosom. The red stain spread like blood across the staring undying's face, printed on the front. The woman's eyes met mine, and her skin turned purple with rage. Sadie! A hand shot out from the throng of bodies and caught my elbow. The hand was shortly followed by the rest of Jasper's mum. She looked as immaculate as ever, lipstick freshly applied and not a hair out of place. She nodded to my dad. Hi, David, you're looking well. Come sit with us. We've got some seats reserved. Great, thanks, Rachel, I said, turning Dad's wheelchair with difficulty and seizing my chance to get as far away from the angry woman as possible. Once people saw that me and Dad were with Rachel, the crowd parted like they were making way for the Lord Protector himself. Soon we were at the VIP area, away from the knockoff merchants and their hungry customers. A man dressed all in black with a semi-automatic weapon slung over one shoulder nodded once before undoing the velvet rope to let us through to the half-empty seats beyond. I took a deep breath, and while the air still smelt of stale beer and body odour and the colour red, at least I wasn't asked to elbow with anyone. A girl from school turned and smiled to me from the front, and I smiled back. As head of the social committee, most people knew who I was. If Dad was still working, most people outside school would know too. Look who I found, Rachel cooed once they were a few rows from the stage. The executioner was already out, his expression hidden under the dark hood of his mask. I parked Dad at the end of the row and put the footbrake on, then bent down and gently slid his oxygen tank off my back and placed it onto the floor next to his chair. Straightening out my skirt, I covertly checked my underarms for sweat patches before I stood back up. Thanks, love, Dad wheezed, giving me a weak smile. I bit my lip hard. He seemed more tired than usual today, but we rarely missed a hanging, and part of me had hoped it would give him something to look forward to, as he rarely left the house. He hadn't said more than a handful of words to me since we got back from the doctor's yesterday. I'll pause it there. I think that gives a little...
Amazing. No, that's a great start. Absolutely
Great.
great start. Because for me, that start it's calm.
Yeah.
And it kind of lulls you into a bit of a, well, this is just an event and there's nothing going on. But we both know that's not the case. But anyway.
No.
So am I correct in that this is your third book, your third novel?
Yes, that's right. So I have My Love, Life in the Apocalypse and also Soulmates and Other Ways to Die. So both of those are a little different in tone to The Undying Tower. So The Undying Tower is quite dark in tone. I'm sure you got that from the opening. Both Soulmates and Other Ways to Die and My Love, Life in the Apocalypse I describe as a dystopian rom-com, which may sound like a bit of a dichotomy, but they are. That's exactly how I'd describe them.
So was becoming an author always your goal? And what have you been doing up till now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like I definitely thought about it when I was in primary school, and I used to love writing. And then I think when I went to secondary school, and I'm sure a lot of teens can relate to this, it sort of dropped away. There was so much other stuff going on. It was really full on secondary school. And I just kind of forgot about it, which sounds bizarre to say, but I really did. It sort of slipped out of my mind. I didn't really think about. We didn't have any author visits either at school that I remember. So I didn't really think about it as a job. And it was when I was at university, sort of coming to the end of my history and English degree. I went to Leeds for my undergrad, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I was having that panic. What am I going to do when I leave? Like the safety net's being pulled out. And we had somebody come in to talk to us, and they were an author. And they were explaining how their degree had helped them with their writing. Not that you need a degree to be an author, absolutely not. I hate that assumption. But it was just really nice to hear from her how she felt about it. So yeah, that was when I got back into it actually, and I did a creative writing master's. Again, absolutely do not need to do that to become an author. The most important thing is your voice. So never ever think that you can't do it just because you haven't got a degree or anything like that. For me, it was the right path. I wasn't quite sure where to start, and I needed a little bit of direction. But I think there's a lot more resources, especially since COVID, and I just don't think I would necessarily need to do that now. So I did my master's at Manchester in creative writing, and then I started writing. So this was when I was maybe 22, 23. I sort of took a year off after finishing my master's from writing. I was working. I was working in IT. Look, IT workers have my entire heart. They have a really tough job, but it's not the most fun job. So it wasn't exactly my dream. And then I started writing for magazines actually initially. I started writing reviews for gaming magazines, that kind of thing. I really love video games, films. I have a film card. Really just love fiction in all its forms. And off the back of that, I actually got back into sort of writing short stories, things like that. Did a couple more courses I found online, and then found Write Mentor, which is where I work now. So Write Mentor is a community of writers online. I run their community hub. There's about 200 of us. We all write children's stories and books for young people, and we absolutely love it. It's the best job ever. So that's fully remote, so it works around my writing, and through that was where I was basically sort of hovering when I found my agent and all that, and the rest is history type scenario.
Excellent. Do you know, that's interesting what you say about
Yeah.
your love of gaming,
Mm,
because that actually, when I think about, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but when I think about the last section of the book,
yeah.
I can see that sort of influence that has come into it, because of
Yeah.
the escape. Let me just call it the escape. Was the
Yes,
easiest way.
yeah. There's a lot going on in the last bit.
Yeah,
It's very
there is a lot.
action packed. I think and a lot of people, I think balance is what's important, right? So I think a lot of people feel like if they love playing video games, and especially if you're a young person playing games, and maybe parents who aren't as up with what's going on with games want you to do different activities, it's always important to explore fiction in different forms. I love playing games. It's brilliant. I can't play games all day. Wish I could. Be great, but I can't. I've got work to do. I've got books to write, but I do find joy in other forms of fiction. And I do think that if you write a book for young people that feels interactive like a game, and I really hope that last portion I write in first person. So I like to hopefully make it as interactive as possible that the person can sort of step right into the page. So yeah, I do really love action-based books. For me personally, I have a really short attention span. I'm terrible, actually. It has to really grab me to start with, and I have to have that action running all the way through. Once you know that as a reader, brilliant. You can go and ask your librarian for that kind of stuff. You can ask in independent bookshops. They'll have lots of information about action-packed books. But yeah, I think gaming can absolutely lead to a lifelong love of reading. It's finding the right types of books if you've got that type of brain that works well in gaming.
Yeah. Well, you're speaking my language now.
Okay.
Speaking as a tech and reader,
Hmm.
yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
As you've already mentioned, The Undying Tower is very dark,
Yes.
and it focuses on the problems that could be created by sections of society having much longer lives.
Hmm.
So, what actually sparked that concept in your mind?
Yeah, so The Undying Tower, if anyone doesn't know, so it's set in a society where 5% of the population don't age past the age of 25 and the other 95% enslave them for it. So the first thing I really wanted to explore was, I grew up in, giving away my age, people can try and work out, I grew up in that Twilight era of vampires live forever and people being immortal. And they're always the most powerful people in society. They're like basically magic. Yes, they hide, but they're so super strong and super fast, and they are basically feared and all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to explore what about the downsides of living forever? Like, because they do kind of go into that in those books, but then it's always overcome by love.
Yeah.
Or something similar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is great. I love those books. Don't get me wrong. No hate on those books. I love Twilight. I devoured it. But I really wanted to see what the opposite version of that would be. What about if these people who are immortal could not live those sorts of lives? And then the book is also dedicated to my lovely friend Caroline, who was a writer. She sadly died of a brain tumor. And whilst I was writing this, and or rather coming up with the idea, sort of the idea was still percolating in my head. I'm a big plotter, and I could not stop thinking about a world where people didn't have to go before their time. And then, of course, that would lead into if you maybe lived longer than your time as well. Is that fair? And how does that work? I was especially fascinated about if you're 16 and you're being told, right, you have to work one of these jobs because you're basically enslaved now for possibly hundreds of years. And what that's like when you're 16 and panicking about what you want to do. To not give too much away, we are recording this on GCSE Results Day. So it makes me think about, the young people panicking about their lives and how you really don't have to, and it's not the end of the world. And there are so many choices open to you unless you are a persecuted population. So that's where all the ideas sort of came together. It was an amalgamation of things.
Well, it's also has very strong themes. I felt came across in the book of companionship and loyalty and friendship. And was that something you particularly wanted to come across as well?
Yeah, I love found family. I'm kind of obsessed with found family. I remember when I was at university, I studied history as well, and we were looking at sort of Tudor's medieval language, and I found out that when people say blood is thicker than water, which is a phrase I really hate actually, I found out the full phrase is actually the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which essentially means that your found family, your brotherhood, is more important than your family, which again also doesn't help. That's not balance. We were talking about balance.
Yeah.
But I think I do love this idea that you can choose your own family. I think especially when you're a young person and you're making your way out into the world and you're feeling very alone.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're actually not alone. I think sometimes we dither of, oh, you're always alone. I'm an only child, so I don't have siblings or anything like that. But I've never felt alone. I've always had really lovely friends. I've been really lucky with, family and extended family who felt like my very close family. So yeah, it is definitely a theme I always think about. And it's also just my favorite thing when I watch it as well, or when I play it or when I read it. I love found family. I love the idea of making connections with people that you've maybe never met before, have completely different world views to you. I think that's amazing to, in this book, without giving too much away, the main character thinks that she lives a very privileged life and her entire life gets flipped on its head and she has to learn to see things from a different perspective. And it's really good for her. And I feel like that's good for all of us.
Definitely. I do have to say, however, that I'm not overly happy with you because there were parts of the book that definitely made me cry. I'm thinking of one particular scene, which you'll probably know which one I'm thinking about, which absolutely broke me.
Oh, no.
How do you cope with writing these deeply shocking and emotional scenes?
I know it's terrible, isn't it? 'Cause part of me, I feel awful, but the other part of me, I'm thrilled that crying over that's it, because it's great. It's so much fun to bring those emotions out. When I was very young, I really wanted to be a film director. I was really obsessed with Steven Spielberg and Tim Burton. I just thought they were the best people ever, and I loved their films, and I thought they were so special and interesting the way that they viewed the world. And then I found out you can't just do like a film director apprenticeship and become a film director. Who knew? You kind of need to know people, and I was like, oh no. And you need a budget, you need a producer. And I thought, how do I become a film director with no budget, no producer, not knowing anyone? Write a book. Brilliant. You can cast anyone. You don't even need to pay their fees. You can have as many special effects as you like. It's brilliant. The imagination is endless. So when I was writing the book, it was great to know, this sounds terrible, you can kind of manipulate the entire world. You are in charge of all the characters. And that means when it comes to your readers, you're kind of manipulating their emotions, and it's fascinating. That makes me sound really evil, but trust me, I'm not like completely evil. I also love it when I make people laugh, like in my funnier books. There are moments, and hopefully moments of levity in this one, but not as many. It's really fun to know that you've had that interaction with readers without having to meet individual people. And I
Yeah.
think what's nice with emotion, because it takes a long time to build up, reading a book is like watching a TV series. It's not like watching a film. It takes several hours. I'm quite a slow reader, actually. It takes me 10 to 15 hours to finish a sort of 300-page book, which, isn't particularly slow, but isn't particularly fast. Doesn't matter how long it takes you to read a book. It's not how many books you read. It's the book that you're enjoying. That's really important. However much time you've got to read is great. And I think when you're having that long, I call it a conversation with the reader, if you feel unheard, it's amazing to have this conversation with someone completely unchallenged, where you can explain to them an entire world. And if you can make them feel the emotions you felt, because you absolutely have to feel those emotions too. So yes, it is difficult writing those scenes. My little tip for anyone writing a sad scene or an exciting scene or a happy scene or a love scene, and you're not really feeling in that mode when you're writing it, is film scores. Amazing. If you go on film scores on Spotify or whatever, sorry, other streaming services are available. But whichever streaming service you use, or even YouTube actually can have loads of them for free. You just go through and you think, what's my favorite scene from a film that has the emotion I really want to evoke? Pop that on in the background. Usually no lyrics help, so you're not singing along or typing along. And that will help you bring out that emotion. Because I think if you're not feeling it, the reader won't feel it. If you feel bored, the reader will be bored. So that's my little tip.
Okay, now I've got to ask, and we are running out of time, which we always do on these things. But my most important question, and it's my last question,
Right.
is this the first one? And are we going to have a what happens next? Because we need it.
Yes. So I've always planned The Undying Tower as a trilogy. The best thing we can do is, get that book out of your libraries, buy the book if you can, get it on Kindle, whatever you can do to show support for the book. And very hopefully, without me getting in trouble for saying anything I'm not supposed to say, there will be more in the series, and they are fully plotted out and planned. And I have written a little bit of the next one. So
Excellent. That's made me very happy because
okay.
we do end on a real cliffhanger, don't we? So
Do.
we need the next book. It's as simple as that. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you. And as I say, I really did enjoy the book, even though you made me cry. I really did enjoy it.
Thanks so much.
I'll be keeping everything crossed for a next one.
Thank you.